So, John, here we are again.
What number is this? Five, six, seven,
Number
something like
eight.
that?
Number eight.
Eight. Okay. Eight.
If you do one a week, they accumulate quite quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you go back and watch them, they're not all bad.
Okay. There's a moment here and there.
Yeah.
So should we do our same top and tail? What's our working definition of
Oh,
conversational leadership? And then a conversation itself, and then a close of what did we further in conversational leadership. So do you want to go first? You want me to go first with the
you go first.
Yeah, what have I said in the past? I've said awareness and relationship, and I haven't put any thought into this. So maybe I just combine the two and see what comes up. Something like conversational leadership is about uh, expanding your awareness of what's going on for you and other people and groups and relationships in the interactions, whether they're, you know, speaking or writing or, me, I like to go as far as music and other things.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Asynchronous conversations.
I don't think it's conversation then. It's I've got this concept of real, what I call real conversation,
Hmm.
and that has got to be face to face, real time.
Hmm.
But of course, we to me, anything else is communication because there's something special about face to face.
Hmm.
Even when we're doing it here now, online on Zoom, there's you know, exchanging messages on WhatsApp. It's exchanging messages on WhatsApp. It's you can call it a conversation if you like, but it's not a real conversation. It's a pseudo
That
conversation.
maybe that's what we talk about because we've got a different question planned. But yeah, I don't. Have we ever had the conversation about like quality of conversation?
No, we
Like what
haven't.
what makes what lifts to that level of like magic or that level of I don't
What
know.
what's interesting, John, is that you picked up on that, and um, you just so what you've been thinking about around conversation leadership, but you triggered a thought in me about something that was going through my head. I do a lot of knowledge cafes, and for me, the value in the knowledge cafes are the conversations people have in the breakout rooms. But when they come back to the whole group, most people don't engage. When they do engage, my feeling is that the conversation isn't particularly. It's difficult in a whole group, but it isn't a quality one, and it doesn't go deep. And so one of the things that was going through my mind is how can I encourage or how can I create an environment where people have deeper conversations? The problem with that, it means going against some of my principles by letting people talk about what they want to talk about. It means maybe being a little bit more controlling, and that's a dilemma. Um, and you've got a whole lot of experience in this, so what are your thoughts on that? Do
We
you need a
actually
little bit
did.
more control to get people to think deeper?
Yeah, I struggle with, anytime we bring up like control, power, manipulation, influence, they all, I don't know if scare me is the right word, but
Yeah,
they concern me like, uh-oh, I hope I'm not doing that. But the reality is, yes, there probably is
we can't
a
help
light
it.
touch of that.
We can't help but even if we're trying to be completely neutral, just who we are, what we say, how we say it, we are always influencing, we're always subtly persuading. Um, but I guess like you and I, we try not we try not to be too overt about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
You know what's popping up for me now, and I think it's semi-related, but you tell me if it's actually related, is one of the things that popped up on Instagram for me this week was kind of a scientific type talk where they've and I know you're kind of into this, like they were all the way down, I think at the electron level. And
mhm.
I don't know if this is news. I feel like I'd heard this before, but the description of it was new to me. And they were saying like if you've got two electrons that are separate from each other, Um, and help me with this. Something like if one of them moves, the other one moves accordingly. And so
Yeah,
they were saying, well,
this
how
is what Einstein called what was it called? Spooky. I can't remember quite what he called it.
something like that.
It's
Yeah.
actually the
But
distance. It's when the two electrons are entangled, and so you can create two entangled quantum particles like electrons or photons. Let's say it's an electron, they have a particular spin. Let's say they're both spinning the same way. You can then separate them by whatever distance you like. And then if you change the spin on one, the spin on the other changes instantly, instantly. So even faster than the speed of light. It's as if they're the same. They're entangled.
yeah.
That's
And so then exactly that, thank you. Because then the thinking is that like, oh, they must be communicating. They must be telling each other. But then I guess the tradition I heard that I think was the first time I'd heard this was, what if you had um, you know how we can do this in real life now? You can have two cameras. You've got like the side camera and the front camera, and you're watching two separate cameras. And if you look at one and you're watching like a fish in a fish tank with two cameras, and you watch the one and the fish turns to the left, and then you look over to the other one and wow, it's already turned left. Wow, those two separate fish communicated really fast.
yeah.
How? But we
It's
of
the
course,
fact it's the same
it's
fish.
the same fish.
It's the
So
same here. It could well be the same electron.
the same electron. And that's where I'm bringing that back to conversation to say this illusion of separation, where what is going on in that quality, that magic of conversation where it looks like John and David are two separate people, but actually it's the same
With the same.
conversation. Yeah, it's the same like collective conscious thing. So what is the conversation doing? Is it just bringing clarity? Is it just forming a new path? What is it that made it a conversation versus communications?
Yeah. Um, I'm not too sure much. I've got too much to add to that. I'm not going to share it now, but I'm looking at some interesting, as I think I said in the earlier podcast, I tend to get sidetracked. But when I get sidetracked, somehow it always comes back to conversation. So I'm looking at something called functional information. I
Okay.
don't know if you've heard of that. It's you can take information that say describe something. You can describe, say, a coffee mug. You can say, it's a container with a handle, that's designed to contain coffee and drink coffee from. Uh, or actually, I got that wrong. You can describe it as a structure, or you can describe its function.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, its function varies depending on context. So a coffee mug. The reason I'm looking over here, I've got a coffee mug here. A coffee mug is great for drinking coffee. It's not so good as a paperweight, but it will do that job. It is pretty awful as a screwdriver. So you can actually measure the functional information in a coffee cup. Now, what's interesting about it is that I'm following that for other reasons. And then I thought, I'm going to ask ChatGPT if it can connect this with conversational leadership. And of course it did. If I thought about it myself for a minute, I would have come up with the same connection because it gets a little bit deep. But essentially you I'm starting to ask the question, what makes a function, what's the functional information embedded in a conversation?
Mm.
So effectively, it's through this lens what makes a good conversation, because you can have a billion conversations that are useless, like about the weather. Well, you can have conversations that have got no function or very little function. They don't serve any particular purpose. and then you can have conversations that can potentially make a big difference. That they've got supposedly in this language a lot of functional information, and for coffee cups and things, there are ways of actually measuring it, believe it or not. It's that I'm trying to get my head around, but that's why it comes back to me is just what makes a good conversation, what makes a functional conversation.
And maybe that does then feels to me like it relates to the question that you and I sort of prepared before, at least didn't talk about it, but like at least thought of the question. Um, how do you know the right time to have a conversation? You want to talk to your boss, but they're in a bad mood, or they're busy, or this feels too different, or it's going to upset them. And I think the way I can relate that to your coffee mug is, um, for me, like lots of conversations are about the DC area traffic is terrible. It was again yesterday. So we talk about traffic, commute, we talk about the weather a little bit, and we talk about sports.
Mhm.
Um, and each one of those has a very predictable function to them, right? But
Yes,
let's
yeah.
take it over to the coffee mug. We could talk about coffee and drinking coffee and a million different types of coffee in a coffee mug, and then get a little bit creative and talk about tea in a coffee mug, right? And feel like we're really being different. But that's like it's in the function, it's built in. Like this is like it's collectively socially okay to talk about that almost any time. But to your point, what if I want to talk about this coffee mug as a paperweight right now?
Yeah.
It's almost never a good time. There's almost a something about how the fear of how you're perceived, the fear of the impact you're going to have. For me, like the fear of the future. If I start talking about coffee mugs as paperweights all the time, people are going to say, well, we don't need to invite John to these meetings anymore.
Mm.
We just need to talk about coffee, obviously. Like that's the function of
I,
this
I
coffee
think I
mug.
think I think you and I mean I've seen you do it enough times, as you know, is that you speak up and say things when I think, oh my God, John, what are you doing? This isn't the time, this isn't the place.
It's the
Uh,
screwdriver. I will bring up the screwdriver of the
bring up
coffee
the
mug.
screwdriver, yeah. And I will I think to be honest, I think I'm a little bit more diplomatic than you. Maybe diplomatic's the wrong word. Maybe a little bit more conservative. Maybe shyer in some sense. To look at it from a negative perspective. But I do like it when I don't. I've said this before. I'll say it again. Our friend in Oxford, Theodore Zeldin,
Mm,
says the sort of conversation he likes is the one where we're prepared to emerge a slightly different person.
hmm
And my version of that is the sort of conversation I like is the one where I don't have to censor what I say.
hmm
That people are going to understand my intent. If I say something that's politically incorrect, they're not going to get upset with me and cancel me. They're going to laugh and say, David, you don't really think that, do you? You didn't really mean to say that. And then maybe I'll catch that what I said had, a nuance that I was missing at the time.
hmm
But it's very rare that I that I cannot censor what I really want to say. And you're the
hmm
same. Again, it's the whole free speech thing, and that's why it horrifies me when I see, especially academics, sort of handed out of their jobs, because they want to talk about something that some people find offensive, or they think we shouldn't be having those conversations. We need to have those conversations. To me, it's what conversational leadership is all about, having those difficult conversations. How do we make better sense of the world? How do we understand each other if we don't if we don't have those conversations?
This kind of gets to one of our root questions then I think you and I always have, and maybe at some point we'll actually have that conversation, which is the whole like, I guess if I oversimplify it, it's thinking versus feeling. So let's
Yeah.
keep pulling that thread of like, okay, academics are having a conversation that is offensive or challenging. Someone receives it as offensive. Um, the offensiveness to me sort of slightly steps away. If it's like a Venn diagram, it's slightly more on the feeling side than the thinking side. And so back to again, like quality of conversations and almost purpose and timing of conversations. Um, I had a point. Help me out. It was like, how do I know? I guess I am heading towards purpose of conversations. Is it more about understanding and shared understanding and uh, uh, making sense, making meaning? I guess I want to go that far.
Yep.
And or is it more about a big part of conversations is so that you and I have some kind of bond, some kind of trust, some kind of, dare I say,
Yeah.
love, right? Is it both or
It's
is
both.
it
Of course,
only
of course,
one?
it's both. Of course, it's both. And I think you start to form bonds regardless of the conversation. You what are you doing when you bond with somebody? When you see somebody being open and vulnerable with you, you feel you can trust them. When people don't attack you or put you down or make sort of sly remarks or say things in a particular tone or particular way, you start to bond. You say, "Hey, I really like this person. I get on. I can have a great conversation with them. I can again. I don't need to censor too much what I'm saying. It's both, isn't it?"
One of the things I remember about some of my diversity learning is, um, if you have all one, let's do both, all one gender, all one race, on like an executive board. Some of the clear back to like sense making. Let's go to the intellectual side for a second. It's not the little baby step of like, well, we just need more genders, more races on this board, like, and therefore we're right, because that was like the research was like, oh, more diverse boards make more money, but it's to your point of like censoring yourself. What they found was what really got underneath it, if I word this correctly, the more diverse your board, the more you had to be open to more perspectives, and you weren't, I guess, in your point, like an echo chamber. It wasn't the fact that you had more gender, more race, period.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
we conversed in a different way.
But the point about it is it's not necessarily about racial diversity. It's about cognitive diversity. You want people who think in different ways. And okay, often that comes with racial diversity. The two are to some degree correlated, but it's that cognitive diversity that you want. I mean, it's if you start, well, we're going to get into politics and race here, but if you start hiring people purely on race, it's
I
so
guess example, yeah, exactly. The example would be this just came up recently. Pregnancy and having breastfeeding rooms,
uh-huh, okay,
right? There's an example of, okay, cognitively, I think men can understand that that's important and need to
yes,
have that room.
yeah,
Uh, mm, but if you have women, it's sort of just lived experience. Maybe not for everybody, obviously, but like, it's just that part is more likely to come up or to be considered in the conversation as one tiny example of cognitive understanding and lived experience. And then we could go on from there, like millions of other things to like bring into the conversation. And I'm not even like talking about censoring, it's more like
yeah,
consideration.
yeah. I'm just reassessing what I said earlier about cognitive diversity because a lot of it is lived experience, which is not necessarily sort of directly cognitive.
Exactly.
Just yeah, if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, then you're going to have a very different lived experience, and you really want that sort of diversity um, in any conversation, well, any serious conversation, as you say, a board meeting or what have you.
If we want to get really
But
sensitive with it, why not? You know me, you always say jump in, I'll jump in with uh, what does it feel like when a police car drives past you?
yes, yeah,
There's a fairly classic example of like, depending on race, gender, age, country, city, living
it's
there,
going to be
not living
different.
there.
Yes, it's highly contextual, highly contextual.
and
And
everybody
that's
will
something
have.
maybe we should talk about sometime, and that's context, because when I'm looking at this functional information, this is all about context. The functional information that's contained in something is a function of context.
Yep.
And coming back to the other thing you said earlier, and you'll find a lot of little memes on YouTube and what have you on this, and that's um, when somebody says something and they say, I'm offended by that. And who's it? I think it's Ricky Gervais basically says, so what? That's your problem. And I tend to agree with that. It's not a serious response to say that you're offended by what someone has said. I mean, to me, if someone says something that you really disagree with, and maybe you generally do feel offended, then engage in that conversation seriously. Don't because I think when you say, I'm offended by that, what you're really doing is trying to close the conversation down, or or even worse, turn it into a fight, into a debate. It doesn't seem to me to be a serious response. You're listening very intently. Do you agree with that? I'm not so sure.
uh, two or three things popped up for me. So yeah, I'm
Okay,
feeling
yeah,
it.
go
Let's see if I can fire through them quickly. One is Dr. Tara Brach. One of her processes is called RAIN, RAIN, and it stands for recognize, allow, investigate, nurture. And she's talking about anything that goes on in your life, like recognize that it happens, like see it, own, don't sort of be on autopilot or miss it or forget it or look past it. Recognize what you're feeling, thinking, seeing, whatever it is. Allow it, don't resist it, because I think a lot of things get, like you're saying, pushed against. I don't like it, stop it. No, 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 allow it. Like this is reality, this I you
on.
know and just
Okay.
notice what happens. Investigate, and that's what you were kind of just saying, like, ooh, I don't like this, I allowed it, it's here, I don't like it, or I love it, or I'm not sure. And the nurture is like, take care of yourself. That kind. So rain popped up for me is because that's been powerful for me lots of times. We did a knowledge cafe this week, I think it was. Raphael Cortina, Gestalt psychotherapist. The question of the cafe was, what is healing? And so, from a psychotherapeutic point of view, he talked about very similar. He's like, most people try to numb pain or resist pain or make pain go away.
Okay.
And his whole point was, are you aware of the pain? And then he separated pain from suffering. Pain tends to be temporary, suffering tends to be longer term. And if you ignore pain or resist pain, it often turns into suffering.
Okay.
Okay, so those were two things. The third thing that popped up for me was, and and this one I don't have the words for it, but it's like to your like offensive conversation. So what if I live a life where every day the same offenses are coming at me? I can reign all I want. I can be aware of it all I want. I, it's too much. Like this needs to stop. Like this is not working for me.
Yeah.
What do you do then? Like this goes back to like was our very first one. Like when is conversation not enough, or when is conversation action? Right? How do I have that conversation to say, wait, this and this and this is hurting every day. No one believes me intellectually. To your point, the cognitive thing is just not, do I just need to be smarter with my words and prove my point and explain it? Or is there something about the felt, oh, this must be not great. Oh, and I'm part of causing that not great. Huh.
Yeah. We're well over time now, so
Uh-oh. Okay, we better
we
stop.
probably should draw to a close. But there's so much here that's worth exploring, because I think we're kind of touching on things where maybe we see things a little bit differently.
Mhm.
Certainly, you're saying things that are causing me to reassess some of my thoughts on things, which is, hey, what a good conversation is all about.
All right, so then real quick, how have we furthered conversational leadership, if at all?
I'm not I'm not too. I mean, in some ways there's nothing totally new about what we've just been discussing. So I could summarize what we've been discussing, but I don't think there'll be any point in that. But I think we're maybe it's this difference between intellectually thinking about something and feeling about something, and the relative importance of the two.
And for
Your
me,
thoughts?
yeah, mine is something like it's similar, I guess. Uh, I guess I just feel my excitement in these conversations. You say I was like leaning in,
Yes,
and
yeah.
so that's where I would go with it. Is I think we furthered because isn't it amazing? We've been talking about this for 5, 10 years ish, um, and it feels like we haven't even scratched the surface.
No,
You know,
we
like
haven't.
it's
We
like we
haven't.
haven't even begun. We've been
This
doing
is
it for
what I find
years.
amazing about conversation is there's hardly a week goes by when I don't see there's something more nuanced about it, something that I've missed, something I've failed to focus on.
Something different, something that's not quite communications, not quite knowledge management, not quite organization development, some other thing that's so close,
Maybe
but
conversational leadership.
maybe it is.
Maybe. Let's stop there, John, shall we? Okay. Right. What have I got to do here? I've got to click here. Click here.